Hey everyone, this is T-Rider, and today we have a special audio for you. It's going to be a dual audio featuring myself and...
Wicked.
So it should be a great audio. We have Human vs. Undead on Twisted Meadows. It's going to be Axslav versus Sonkie, so two pretty good players here in the United States. And it's basically going to be covering a more unusual strategy, but nonetheless fairly effective. So if you could go ahead and get to 2 minutes, and I'm going to throw it over to Wicked for a moment.
Alright, so like you said, these are two fairly good American players, and I believe this game was actually an AmeriCup game. So just an example of how people are, coming together in the United States to promote a little bit more Warcraft 3. And you're going to see Axslav getting some, like T-Rider mentioned, some more, offbeat strategies. But, any player, no matter how good he is, can be beat by something that he just doesn't know how to do anything with. So we'll see if Axslav's able to pull that off in this game, and we'll tell you why or why not. All right, T-Rider, anything else before we unpause?
I think that's all we're going to have to address. So if you're not there, then go ahead and pause the audio and line it up for 2 minutes. We will be unpausing in 3, 2, 1, unpause. So it should be Fog of War. On or off, it's really up to your own personal preference, and 1 time speed, and we'll do it from Axslav's point of view.
Alright, that's a pretty good point of view to be going. And, yeah, so we've got, this game is, you can see if you're looking over at Sonkie, he's just doing basic militia creeping. And if you're going to look over at Axslav's base, you can see his interesting hero choice, which is the Crypt Lord first. There are a couple of reasons for going Crypt Lord. Beetles make creeping pretty, ridiculously easy, because they're like water elementals that never run out. You can just keep using them over and over again, and just keep getting new ones after every camp. They're really inexpensive as far as mana goes. And then later game, if you really, feel the need, you can definitely retrain to Impale, and you can rip through riflemen and casters way easier than you could with, say, a Lich and a Death Knight. Anything about the hero choices or early game strats here, T-Rider?
No, you have pretty normal creeping by the human as he takes down that no overseer, and undead just going to start to creep up some smaller camps so that he can get beetles and begin to creep larger after that. Human usually is going to gain a fairly significant early game advantage as far as level, because of the militia being able to creep extremely quickly, and he's going to be coming in for it just seems like he's coming in for harass. However, I'm not quite positive, but the undead's just going to continue to creep because he just wants to level up that Crypt Lord.
Yeah, there's really nothing you can do with, say, like a level 1 Crypt Lord. You'll notice that Axe is going for Axe being Axslav. That's what I'm going to call him, because that's what I call him. He's going for a fairly early tech. That's because he is way more concerned with getting those late game units than he is with these early gamers. And with a hero like the Crypt Lord, with all those summons, and especially with an undead base, which has like Nerubian towers and lumber ghouls, which can help fend off your base in a pinch. You really don't need all that much tier 1 to be able to hold against a human with some footmen. If you have a good enough base build with a Nerubian tower and a couple ghouls, you should be able to fend off most early game attacks. So if you're an undead player, don't be afraid to tech. Some of them you'll want to get 4 or 5 fiends before you do, but it's really not necessary. You can go with 2 or 3 fiends, and as long as you use your ghouls, as you'll see Axslav doing right here, he's sending out his ghouls as well as his beetles to cover for his fiends. You should be okay.
So if you notice there, after the human got level 2, he really wants to disrupt the creeping, and that's what as far as the human aspect, that's really what you want to do. Because if undead heroes get to a high level, we all know that the nuking from those is just going to destroy your army. So he puts a pretty good harass and really forces the Crypt Lord pretty much to be passive here, as it has under 200 health and had much less than that when it was creeping. And so you just have a little bit of pretty intensive micro battle here. Both sides not wanting to take too heavy of casualties, but they want to make sure that they can put the other person at an economic disadvantage. So both heroes are very low in HP, and this is probably going to be where the push has to end.
And you can also see that the Crypt Lord, even when he's not there, as far as the battle goes, the beetles that he summons are still extremely good at doing what they do, which is distract the footmen and everything else, the water elementals, away from the Crypt Fiends. Because really, if you're going Crypt Lord, you want to be going Fiends along with it, so that those beetles can serve as a meat shield for you. And you'll notice he's getting, the armor skill second, quite obviously. That's really what you want to get. There really isn't enough mana in the Crypt Lord's pool for Impale and Beetles. You'll be able to get off maybe 1 Impale if you want to keep 5 Beetles running at all time. So make sure you get that passive, because it is quite a good one.
And a bit later on, you can always retrain, so it isn't, especially when you have the Death Knight, and he'll have some healing. And I believe we're going to see the retraining of the Crypt Lord a little bit later on, so it's something you want to take note of. Also, most undeads really despise expanding. I think it's because of the overall price of the expansion, in addition to just how weak it is. The towers are very expensive and they take up a lot of space, so they're not easily masked. Whereas human and orc towers, they're basically a 2x2 as far as like actual squares that it takes up, so you can get a lot more in there for a much cheaper price. And so an expansion is probably going to end up helping him in the long run, because the human won't expect it.
Summoning is complete.
Yeah, and you'll see Axslav is widely considered, and by widely I mean by me and a couple people I know, to be a guy who is going to attempt to do things that you won't expect, and he's going to, to a large extent, as far as the game goes, he's going to rely on the fact that you don't think he's going to do what he's going to do to beat you. And this can work for the average player too, because I mean, your average human who's used to seeing a cookie cutter undead, who gets up to destroyers or does whatever undeads normally do versus a human, he's going to be pretty shocked when he sees maybe you're expanding, maybe you're going a Crypt Lord, maybe you're getting different units in tier 2 than he would think you were, and that kind of thing, just even at the early stages of the game, just throwing him off can completely ruin him for the rest of the game.
Yeah, at any level, people seem to forget that Warcraft isn't a micro war. It is actually a RTS, meaning real-time strategy. So believe it or not, there's actually some strategy involved in any game of Warcraft, and you don't necessarily always have to go with the same heroes. However, that does not mean you can do anything and be successful. Axslav, he does different strategies, but they're not stupid. Like, they're planned out. They definitely are going to be able to counter. He has a good counter system with his heroes, so that's one thing to do. Surprise is good, but if you try to surprise them too much with like an unusable counter, it might just end up hurting you more than helping you.
Right, and most of his strategies are based somewhere in the cookie cutter, with a little bit of exaggeration. He's getting Fiends in a Crypt Lord, which actually isn't that weird of a strat. I mean, most humans wouldn't be expecting to see it, but it's not something that's completely, unforeseen. But you'll also see that Axslav, if you're going to take a look over at his lumber, he actually has a larger number of lumber ghouls than you might expect. And this is actually Axe noticing that his Fiends are getting dominated at every turn, and with the addition of a Mountain King by Sonkie, they're just going to keep getting bolted and owned even more. So you don't, even if you start out going Fiends at the beginning of the game, that doesn't mean you're stuck with Fiends. As long as you're able to recognize, hey, my Fiends are getting owned, I should get some different units now, then you should be okay. And we'll actually see him using ghouls a bit later to a much better effect. And you'll see here that the level 2 carrion beetles and even the level 1s are pretty effective in keeping the units away from the creeps. Or the Fiends. They're pretty effective in keeping footmen and riflemen away from the Crypt Fiends, and just the heroes constantly moving around, making sure you get off death coils on those. There's actually some pretty nifty burrow micro here by Axslav. Burrow's definitely a good skill to get on any Crypt Fiend. And so you see Axslav, the battle here is mostly won by his Crypt Lord, and because I mean those beetles, they really, at level 2, they start doing actually a fair bit of damage, 15 to 18. And against the rifleman's armor, which takes extra damage from it, they can do a fair bit of damage, and they can also tank fairly well with 275 HP and heavy armor against footmen and keep stuff away from those Crypt Fiends.
So yeah, beetles definitely helped out and are what kept them in the battle. However, Mountain King's bolt is really dominating. Axslav is running as a very low HP Death Knight around, and you always want to be careful. The Mountain King has less than 75 mana, so you can do that fairly effectively without having to worry too much. But whenever there's a bolt, you don't want to be dancing because he'll just slam that on you, and you'll end up losing your hero.
And you can see here Axslav bringing out his ghouls. Those are going to be able to deal with footmen a lot more effectively than crypt fiends and beetles, and even do a bit more to riflemen than anything else that Axe has in his repertoire. And if you take a quick look over at Axe's expansion, I know there's a battle going on, it's kind of intense, but he built a necropolis there, and I obs a lot of games of Axe because, he's on my friends list whenever he'll join a game. Sometimes I'll pop in, just watch him play, whoever he's playing at the time. And every time he expands with undead, he'll always get a necropolis. And, sometimes I say, hey Axe, why do you get a necropolis? He says, well, I mean, it's really not all that big a deal. You can just, it's not like the worker has to stay there and keep working on it. He can summon both of them, then go get some gold. And yeah, it's expensive, but later in the game, when all your expansions are getting destroyed one after another, you're probably going to wish that you had a necropolis there to TP to.
Yeah, and Warcraft is all about making trades, and sometimes you have to do something that you really don't want to do, but you have to do it, like always buying a TP for your hero, just things like that just are basically, you have to do it. And for undead, even though a lot of undeads don't do it, they really should be getting that necropolis, because that really is a major disadvantage to not being able to, or to not be able to TP back to your base to protect it, especially when you have limited workers to repair, and again, a weaker expansion, so you want to be able to TP. It also adds some pretty good meat, so you actually have a tanking building that will be able to take some damage, so it doesn't put you in quite of a bad situation.
Yeah, and you can see here Axslav is attempting to do a bit of a beetle harass on Sonkie's peasant line. If it weren't for that arcane tower, that'd actually be very effective. I've seen players completely screwed over by just two beetles at their expansion, destroying all of their peasants, and maybe even knocking down the building if they don't get there fast enough. But right now is probably a more boring part of the game. You can see that Sonkie's going for more riflemen to try and counter those crypt fiends, and possibly destroyers that those obsidian statues that Axslav is getting will turn into. So, we're seeing lots of riflemen, a couple, not so much sorceresses as maybe priests for just heal rather than slow, which can be absorbed by the destroyers. You'll actually see that Axslav has gotten a shade. One thing about a shade, it's actually not a bad idea to occasionally get a shade, because if you're going to get 6 acolytes in the beginning, say to scout or something, and then later in the game you don't really have a use for it, a sacrificial pit, if I'm not mistaken, is something under 200 gold, so it's really not all that big an investment. And as you'll see here, Axslav's actually going for frost worms with his boneyard. So, especially if you're deciding to make the tech to frost worms, definitely invest in a shade. And you'll also notice Axslav's third hero choice here is the Pit Lord, which is a fairly efficient counter to Rifleman with his Rain of Fire. And, he's basically the closest that Axe can get to a aimed sort of AoE spell. And I'm not sure if he has or not, but I guess he hasn't retrained to Impale yet. But so we're just seeing how this is going. There's just a battle going on. I'm sure T-Rider can talk about battle micro much better than I can, because I have none.
So basically, we have a pretty intense battle here. We have the Pit Lord's AoE going on, and Sonkie just trying to move away from that. Both players, the Pit Lords are pretty low level, and I don't believe that Axslav has retrained to Impale, so he really isn't going to want to fight a too large of a scale of battle unless he really thinks it's going to favor him. And so that's pretty much it. Wicked?
Yeah, and you'll see here that Axslav is going to take advantage of this opportunity. The battle has just ended, and he's going to set up an expansion right when his opponent wouldn't expect it. Because, when you think setting up expansions, you think you do it when you're winning, you do it right after you've won a battle. But Axe already has one expansion, and he knows that Sonkie has one because he's got a burrowed carrion beetle right next to it. So he decides that he's going to try and push the advantage into his way, and he figures, if they catch it, I can cancel both my buildings. I'm out maybe 100 gold, maybe 100, 200, something like that. and it's not that big a deal if they catch it. But if it does go up, then I pretty much win because I've got 3 bases compared to 2.